This is the Messiah Hour with Ari Louis.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsAndNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. We have a great segment today. At any time, you can email us at relouisshow@hotmail.com or messiahhour@hotmail.com, messiahhour@gmail.com. And, of course, you can make a financial contribution through my PayPal, which is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. A lot of interesting stories going on in Israel and a lot of controversy. We're going to bring on a very special guest. This man has done great things in journalism. He is the founder and the CEO of Israel Resource News Agency, established that in 1987. He's been featured on CNN Radio, Philadelphia Inquirer, J-Post, and much, much more. Back to the program, Mr. David Bedene. How you doing out there, sir?
Very well, thank you.
This was about 2 nights ago. Mordechai Rosenfeld was murdered.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the story, even though it's very
sad. This is an aspect of the story that I have broken. Our news agency broke the story, and only because other agencies aren't breaking the story. The material is out there. Every news agency in the country and in the world has the story, and no one's using it. The fact that the Palestinian Authority has established what we call a murder incentive fund. If you murder a Jew, you get money, and even your family gets money for life. And the fact is that is because that 4 years ago, the documents of this fund came out publicly because the Palestinian Authority actually published it on their website, put it out in English and in Arabic. I have it on my website, which is called IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And the fact is, when people are asking, why did this happen? Why do these terror incidents happen? And why do individuals conduct acts of murder? Well, I can just give the example of Dalia Lamkos, my daughter's very good friend, who was murdered while standing at a bus stop. Arab hit her and knocked her over, and then he came back and slit her throat to make sure she was dead. He was caught eventually because he bragged amongst all his friends that he did it. And at the trial of the Arab who did the murder, he walked in smiling from ear to ear with his whole family, with food for the whole family. They had a little picnic in the court because they'd all been awarded funds from the Palestinian Authority for life. And so I put on my website a picture of Dalia Lemkos, the beautiful girl that he murdered, and the smiling murderer. And the image of the smiling murderer is a matter of not only a Palestinian Authority policy, but unfortunately of the Israeli government policy, the Israeli government which gives funds, hands over what they call worker rebates, tax rebates, to the Palestinian Authority, supposedly to compensate for workers who pay taxes to Israel and they don't get the money back for their national insurance and stuff, and national security, their social security. Israel hands it over to the PA. The Palestinian Authority, for the last 16 years, has used Israel's tax rebates for ulterior motives. 16 years ago, it's hard to believe. This was discovered, and 11 years ago, a book came out in Hebrew. It was called Betoch HaKis Shel HaRa'is, in the pocketbook of the dictator of the Palestinian Authority, how money goes in, and then that money is used for ulterior purposes, especially for cash for the arms of the PA, but also something else which is extremely important. Besides paying murderers, the whole BDS movement comes out of that fund also. So the BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction, that whole movement, that what I've discovered, and it wasn't hard to discover it. Every journalist, again, can easily discover it if they have an eye and ear and fingers and just pull it off. All you have to look at the BDS website, and you see that all their funds are coming and all their support is coming from the Palestinian Authority. And where the Palestinian Authority, again, is getting their funds for these arbitrary purposes of paying murderers and conducting derogatory campaigns against Israel. It's coming from unchecked funds coming from the Israeli government.
Now, tell us a bit, what percentage of the budget, if you will, goes to these terrorists? How much money exactly is involved?
Well, I can't tell you scientifically right now. 4 years ago, when some people in Israeli intelligence made an estimate, they emphasized that 6% of the Palestinian Authority budget is going to subsidize murderers. I can't tell you how much. I haven't done an economic. I mean, if someone were to, let me turn it around. If one of your listeners would want to commission a study of the economics of the Palestinian Authority and how much money is going to terrorism and how much money is going to purposes such as the BDS, We could find that out, but it requires us to hire an Arabic-speaking journalist who's able to go through their books. So that can be done. And also we would find out then how much of the money is going to organizations like J Street, Peace Now, etc. But this has to be investigated and documentation has to come out.
Yes, indeed. Any listeners out there, if you're interested, you can contact me, IsraelSportsNewsRadio@gmail.com.
And my website is right out there, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. With us, everything's transparent. We show exactly what we do, what we are investigating. We're investigating the Palestinian Authority media, the Palestinian Authority economy, the Palestinian Authority connection to terror, the connection to Unruh, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, this policy of keeping refugees in refugee camps under false premise and promise of the right of return.
And also, something very interesting, I guess, if you can enlighten us, how come there are not Israeli leaders speaking out against this? You talk about so easily to find this out, and now that's known. So how come the Israeli leaders aren't doing anything about it?
Well, you have ever since the launch of the Oslo process, you have a classic situation of multiple conflicts of interest between Israel and between people in Israel and their, actually, we can say we're a nation of prophets or a nation of prophets, one with an F, one with a PH. The Palestinian Authority, including Gaza, is a boon to the Israeli economy. The Palestinian Authority is Israel's second greatest trading partner, importing 30 billion shekels of products each year. And many Israeli corporations, leading Israeli corporations, are tied into their umbilical cord to the PA economy. When you hear the news that Israel has allowed 600 trucks to go into Gaza, we're not talking about they swing it and wing it and say, oh, this is humanitarian supplies. They don't try to explain to you this is all products that are being sold to the Palestinian Authority at a very high price, at a nice retail price. Money is the Palestinians are paying for it for the Israeli products with humanitarian funds that they get. And there's Israel's leading corporations. The leading corporation is the Nesher Corporation, which provides the PA and especially Gaza with so much cement and sells it, is owned by a fairly new addition to the Israeli economy, a man named Blavtavnik. And Blavtavnik is also the same tycoon who's bought up Channel 10 and the whole empire around the Channel 10 commercial network. Israeli leaders are not known for their courage. Finding an Israeli leader to even today, as a boy is being buried after an attack, our agency went to a number of Israeli government officials and even leaders in Judea Samaria, where you raise questions, where you ask the Israeli government to demand that the Palestinian Authority cancel its murder incentive fund. Nada, no response whatsoever. Say, well, build more houses in Judea Samaria. Build more houses in Judea Samaria does not relate to the incentive that anyone has to murder a Jew. And I'm talking about a very serious financial incentive. And because Israel has freed as many as 9,000 people who were convicted of murder and attempted murder in the last 20 years, they just assume they're going to get out.
Scary to think about and hard to understand at the same time. If you're just joining us, this is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is Mr. David Bedene of Israel Resource News Agency. His website is IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Let's talk about Unruh, because the last time you were on my program was about 6 months ago. We were talking about some of the things they were doing which were not good for Israel or even the Palestinian people. What has been the latest with Unruh?
Well, the latest with Unruh is that we've uncovered their new school books, which by the way, we have a book called Roadblock to Peace, which you can access on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, and order it from us, no problem. But what we've discovered is that we've gone through their school books very, very carefully, and whereas the American government and other government that gives them money for their what they call the human rights curriculum, we find there to be no human rights. It's all a matter of pushing an idea that they have to train basically 500,000 children with the premise and promise that they're going back to where they came from in '48, and the school books and the school curriculum are reflective of that. So we've been able to get into those schools, film those schools. We made two movies recently. One is Unruh Goes to War, and the other is the Children's Army of Hamas, and we're in the process of making another film. basically the Hamas takeover. We basically led the field of publicizing the Hamas takeover of the schools, of the Unruh schools, so that in addition to the practical element of right of return, had a religious element, putting a religious zeal into the ideal, and where even though the U.S., Canada, European Union, Australia, and England, in their donations to UNRWA, forbid UNRWA from employing members of Hamas, they're doing so very openly. And my criticism of the Israeli government is the Israeli government hasn't stood up enough to object to that. So you have basically the children in the schools being prepared for war. The American government denies it's happening, even though we brought to their attention. So we have to now go to the American Congress. If any of your listeners want to help us get to Congress and organize our experts to get to them so that we can testify in Congress that indeed we have the proof that Hamas have infiltrated the schools that are being funded by the United States government, it's a very, very important issue to know. It's not only a Hamas in terms of, in a sense, a religious entity, but we're talking about the military wing of Hamas. They organize something called Al-Qutla clubs. And again, Al-Qutla comes from the Hebrew. It's similar to the word ketel, or murder. In Hebrew, we have that, and very, very similar. So my message is very simple and very clear. Take a look at our material. It's being denied by the American government, and the American government won't even look at it. That's very important. And we deal with the actual school books, the actual curriculum, the actual Hamas takeover of what's happening, and again the Hamas military takeover, where children are being armed to the teeth.
And the last time you were on my program, you said the main thing that the listeners should do is not write petitions. Those don't really work. Write to congressmen, right?
Anytime you see a petition, know that the petition is geared for only one purpose. That is to build the members of the organization putting out the petition. It's a bad thing. If you want Congress people, or if you're in other countries besides the United States, your elected representative to take you seriously, you write that person a personal letter, even if there's some typos, not to worry, and then you call that office and say, "May I have the name of your staffer?" And then the staff person will tell you whether to send it by fax or by email, carrier pigeon, or by envelope, and then you call to make sure they got it. I can tell you, I heard this in the British Parliament and the American Congress. Two officials not coordinating with each other said if we get 10 reasonable letters on any subject, we heard this from a key person in the British Parliament and a key person in the American Congress, if we get 10 reasonable letters on any subject, we take it very seriously. We go into a tizzy and we take it very seriously.
So there you go. If you want to be active, you want to help out, and especially if you live in the United States, write to your congressman, as Mr. Bedene said, 10 personal letters, and we'll get an action much better, obviously, than a petition.
And make sure they got it. In other words, you call and say, if you're contacting, for example, Congressman, let me think for a second, Engel, Elliot Engel in New York. He has a staff person, a wonderful fellow named Jason Steinbaum. So you contact Mr. Steinbaum. I have a thing of concern for you, and I'd like to bring this to your attention. Now, on my website, under special reports, we have a guide on how to contact the U.S. members of the U.S. Middle East subcommittees of the House and of the Senate, and it's everything is online, very easy to find, but very few people get active, and most people talk to each other in shul instead of doing what needs to be done. And the fact that there's a murder incentive program using funds that come to the Palestinian Authority, this should be of concern to every taxpayer in the world. Even if you're not, a lover of Israel in particular, but about a lover of justice.
Yes, indeed. Again, this is Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports News Radio. My guest is Mr. David Bedene. Let's talk about a story on your website, Israel Behind the News. The story, Hamas Hails Jerusalem Operation. And what was scary with this story is the spokesman for Hamas said about the two quote-unquote operations, the stabbing and the shooting, that it was an achievement.
That's right.
I mean, I don't even know how to explain that, but tell our audience a bit more about the story.
Well, this is what we're talking about. Many of Israel's adversaries take truth serum in the morning and they put it out clearly, and where you have the mainstream media kind of guarding them that they won't get out. But here you have a stabbing, murder, and also another attack which took place, and they just take credit for it and say it's an accomplishment. Now, why does this? How can you influence this? The money for Hamas these days, besides coming from Qatar and coming from Saudi Arabia, which we know about, is also coming from the major Western countries. When we filmed the military training camp of Hamas, where they're training children how to use weapons to murder Jews, they said I said, where'd you get the money for the camp? Oh, we got the money from Switzerland. Now, Switzerland didn't give money for a military training program. They gave money for medical supplies. They just took the money from the medical supplies and sold them on the open market. My message to the now right now there's going to be a lot of pressure for the American government, the Canadian government, the European Union, etc., to give direct funds to the regime in Gaza, which is run by Hamas. And of course, there's no, I mean, it's not of course, but it's a fact that this is going into their military operation. And it's very important, by the way, to understand that Hamas quietly works in an arrangement with the Palestinian Authority. And if people are inclined to want to do demonstrations and things like this, the place to go, if you're in the United States, to go to demand the closure of the PLO embassy in Washington, which is right now, which is also coordinating the BDS and working with Hamas on this public profile of endorsing murder. And I think if there were 10 or 15 people standing in front of the PLO mission every week, once a week for an hour, it would have a very big effect. Same thing, by the way, with the United States State Department. The State Department, I was there recently, and I saw how easy it is to take a sidewalk and make a demonstration there. And my counsel to people who care in the United States is start having vigils outside the State Department and outside the PLO mission in Washington. What we learned from the Soviet Jewry movement is that small groups of people who are focused can succeed big time.
You know, I'm so happy you're on this program because part of what we like to do is go away from the mainstream media because they're not always honest. And this idea you're talking about where our enemies are having truth serum in the morning, they tell the truth, mainstream cleans it up, kind of reminds me of a Conan O'Brien sketch about 15 years ago where we had the guys who moved the lips, and Arafat would say one thing, and he would say, I want peace, and then they would translate it as, I want to kill Israel. And that's the thing. If you look at all their videos where they actually say they are blunt, honest of what they want to do.
Precisely. So, Arafat was once asked what he thought of my videos. We had a project to video him. And this is in front of Shimon Peres. Peres had tried to say that our tapes were doctored, believe it or not. He said it on a conference call to 50 Jewish organizations. So Arafat said, I like what David Bedene is doing because now people can see that I'm also speaking to my own people in my own language. And he said that with using my name. My wife immediately said, does everyone have to know who you are? But there you have it.
Oh, there you go. Yes, not always fun to have a terrorist say your name, but it's what happened.
He spells it right, and I go to press conferences. He used to recognize me. What can I tell you? But no, we did in our film, our last two films, we have the Hamas leadership on the record, speaking very openly, very clearly, also talking, praising about their relationship with Hamas. We also produced a movie called For the Sake of Allah, which is we had conversations with killers inside the jails. And all these things can be expanded. It's just a matter of finding support to do it. Most of the film industry is supported by people who are pro-PLO or pro-Arab, or they just want to see the best of things. I mean, I want to just give you some insight also into the flotilla. I'm probably the only one who you're going to meet who on this program who was on the flotilla. 7 years ago, I got onto the boat and interviewed I didn't travel with them, but I was a journalist invited to come on the first flotilla. And I met doctors, lawyers, social workers, teachers, people who were very, very well-meaning, not anti-Semitic, who were told by a group called the Rabbis for Human Rights that there is starvation in Gaza. And they were told by a social worker from Israel named Jeff Halper, who got up there and said there's no food or medical equipment in Gaza. So these people looked at me when I was asking them questions, and what do you want from us? When 50 rabbis tell us that there's starvation in Gaza, and when a social worker from Israel tells us that there's no food or medical supplies in Gaza, we have to help these people. Now that's what I have to explain. Jeff Halper and a man named Rabbi Arik Asherman, also known as Trasherman, the head of the Rabbis for Human Rights, this is what they push. Now, if you can even see it on the web, because they haven't taken it off the web, they called it the Ta'anit for Gaza. Ta'anit. Look at it, the Fast for Gaza project. And the founder of the Rabbis of Human Rights, Rabbi David Foreman of blessed memory, who died 3 years ago, when he saw this, he was flabbergasted. He was appalled. He denounced his organization for doing it. Unfortunately, he was actually as he was at his deathbed while he was dying of cancer, he was sending out many messages to try to counter what Trasherman was putting out, as if there was starvation in Gaza. So these guys understand what's happened. The people who come on the flotilla are genuine, good people who want to help other people. They're convinced there's people who are starving in the world, and they listen to these deformed rabbis who have told them that.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here at Israel Sports and News Radio, and my guest is David Bedene. Let's talk about a story on your website. About a week ago, Defense Minister Moshe Alon confirmed that last year, during the war in Gaza,
Yes.
Iran was trying to do cyber attacks. How scary was that? I mean, thank God nothing happened, but I'm assuming Iran will try that again in the future, right?
Well, in my opinion, again, this is a lay person. I'm not a techie, but my logic says that in the next round of conflict, someone's going to go in the air and try to knock off the internet. Now, when China knocked off the internet for a while, and certainly knocked off the internet of Tibet for a while, we understood the power of what a country can do, or what can be done if you know how to push the right buttons. I'm convinced that there's going to be a massive cyber attack, and our children who do not know what a typewriter is, right? Let alone when I wanted to start my daughter on a youngest daughter on a stamp collection a few years ago at Bat Mitzvah, she says, "Abba, what's a stamp?"
Right.
But there's going to have. I hope that everyone has downloaded everything that they have onto what's called PAPER, if they have that, and they really better have it, because the other side. That's what the other side is going to try to do, and not only in Israel but certainly in the Western countries. And it certainly can be done. You can close off the internet in the country, in a geographic area. There's technical ways of doing it, and cyber attacks are entirely possible. I personally have been cyber attacked a few times when I put out some, I put up some firewalls and stuff like this. But when I put out some investigations of the Rabbis of Human Rights after they ran the Durban conference back in 2001, I got hundreds, and someone cyber attacked me, and they didn't like my attack on these deformed rabbis.
I was cyber attacked myself actually 4 years ago by the quote-unquote Free Gaza movement to my website. Show up to work and was shocked what I saw. So yes, it's a scary thing. It's a dangerous thing.
The Free Gaza movement is infamous for that. And by the way, my counsel to people, I come from the world of community organizations, social work, where we say don't get ulcers, give ulcers. And if any of the anarchist groups that exist, Breaking the Silence and all of them, they're all very, very open. And they like people to communicate with them, and they like people to come on their trips and on their programs. And I think that hundreds of people should join their programs and join their tours. One of the amazing things going on, and this is a newsworthy thing for people who haven't heard it on your show, is that these groups of Rabbis of Human Rights and B'Tselem and Breaking the Silence actually spread the word that Jews in Judea poisoned the wells of the Arabs. How did I find this out? When I was on a visit to the British Parliament last year, I was about to meet a member of Parliament, a very menschlich, very nice fellow, very, very sympathetic to Israel. He wouldn't meet with me. Well, why wouldn't you meet with me? I said, did I not brush my teeth? Did I not take a shower? What's going on? He says, well, we understand he understands I live in Judea and Efrat. And I said, well, we understand it's your policy to poison the wells. Oh, really? Well, his secretary said he had just taken a tour with all these organizations, and these rabbis and these social activists, as he called them, convinced him that's the case, and that's how bad it is. A pro-Israel member of the Parliament in Britain convinced that Jews are poisoning the wells of Arabs. But it doesn't stop there. My next meeting was at the Board of Deputies in London, which is the Jewish establishment of London, and one of the most prominent officials there, also a very pro-Israel guy who even has maintains an apartment in Jerusalem, also would not meet with me and my colleagues, because we weren't even dealing with these issues. We were dealing with Unruh, but they wouldn't talk to us. Why? Because they said, we understand that you're poisoning wells. Now, you understand what's going on. They take groups of people, Breaking the Silence, Rabbis, Human Rights, and all this. They take groups around, and there's no one to challenge them while they're there. As a matter of fact, there's a Breaking the Silence there. It's on their website. They're taking a new group to Hebron next week. And what they always do in Hebron, they say, oh, the settlers urinate on us, and attack us, and they do all kinds of things, and there's no substantiation, but they're very convincing, very convincing. And these are Jews who set them up. They also pay Arabs to act out what they're doing, and they get money from 7 European countries.
Yeah, it's scary, shocking.
So they have to anarchize the anarchists. Don't get ulcers, give ulcers, and get on their website, subscribe to their material. This Friday they have tours of. They go to Bedein and Ilin, and they throw Molotov cocktails. And how do we know? Not because I'm imagining. Every time they go for a demo, they film themselves and show that at the end of the demo they throw Molotov cocktails on the roads. There's not enough people complaining about them. Certainly not the leadership of Judea-Samaria, who lack backbone to do anything. So this has to be a grassroots thing.
Yes, indeed. Last question we have for you before we let you go. Let's move over to England, a scary situation where someone who is a big fan of Islamic extremists could potentially be part of the political landscape in a very hardcore fashion in Britain. Please tell us a bit about that story.
Well, you're talking about George Galloway, probably.
Yes.
But George Galloway is, first of all, it's a blessing to have a guy like that, and I'll tell you why. Because he's up front. He's very clear. You don't have to investigate him. He is what he is. He is, and he. I don't think he's going to win anything, but he certainly has established a foothold someplace. We should always hope that that the enemies of the Jews are upfront with what they're doing and not covering up what they're doing. So he's stupid enough to put himself out there in front of everyone so you can see. But the fact that a person like that is treated with legitimacy is, as if it's as legitimate to have a guy like that in politics is very serious. Much more serious is the manipulation of British politics and politics around the world by the PLO, by the Palestinian Authority, using this what they call BDS. I mean, BDS is basically an upgraded version of the Arab boycott. But this generation doesn't like to use words like Arab boycott or blacklisting, things like that. That's from the previous generation.
And people should know that the Nazis, before they did violence, did a BDS movement, correct?
Absolutely. Now, here, let's review this. It's extremely important that your insight. If you go into the Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles, the first thing you see is their classrooms, okay? And what they did for before they opened up concentration camps, or certainly before Kristallnacht, 5 years before Kristallnacht, they were demonizing the Jews really, really well. What's very important to know, though, and this is where everyone needs to understand something extremely important. The Palestinian Authority and there's the analysis of their school books are on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. The Palestinian Authority has adopted school books, which certainly also demonize the Jews. And they say, they're Nazi school books. No, they're not. You know why they're not? I asked 3 scholars of Nazi Germany about 3 elements of the Palestinian Authority media and school system. One, did the Nazis ever have a school book which said clearly to kill Jews? No. Did they ever have days where they praised those who killed Jews? No. Did they ever have films about those who killed, which glorified those who killed Jews? No. They did it without glorification. The Palestinian Authority, coming from their PLO background and the background of Hashemi al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, they do all those things in terms of upfront praise of those who murder Jews. So if you try to compare the PLO and the PA to Nazi Germany, you're being unfair to the Nazis.
Wow, well said, indeed. Again, my guest has been David Bedene. This is the Messiah Hour here on Israel Sports and News Radio. And you can go to Mr. Bedene's website, which is IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Thank you for being on the program, sir.
Let me make one more offer.
Sure.
Well, it's a great thing to travel, but not everyone has travel expenses to take. What we develop in our agency, we have 4 experts. We do Skype lectures now where you see our friendly faces. And, for a modest fee, we give Skype lectures either from our homes or from our office at Beta Grown Press Center and 37 Hillel. And I did 3 Skype lectures this week at different times, and it works out beautifully. It's a lot less expensive and a lot less wear and tear than putting somebody on a plane and traveling 6,000 or 8,000 miles. But let's use modern technology to be a lot more informed and use the expression, "Let my people know."
Well said. And if our enemies are going to use technology against us, we might as well use technology to stand up for ourselves. So
Absolutely.
there you go. All right. Thank you for being on the show, Mr. Bedene. We really appreciate it. Again, the website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch. Be well.
Shalom uvracha.